Okay, go. This takes a while to warm up. Okay, we're going to get started. Good afternoon. Today is Monday, August 8th, 2016. Welcome to the Public Works Gang Reduction Committee meeting. I am Chairman Joe Buscaino. I'm joined by my colleagues, Mr. Rue, Ms. Martinez, Mr. O'Farrell, and Mr. Price. Everyone on deck here. Hope you had a great weekend. If I can now turn your attention to our agenda. We have cards on all items from Mr. Herman. If we can give him 4 minutes to speak on those items. Please come forward, Mr. Herman. You may speak on all items that you filled out, items 1 through 8. 5 minutes. We'll do 4 minutes.
Now, in regards to item number 6 in particular, we have an issue regarding Joe Buscaino, in which he states that the Department of Public Works was to report a feasible installing fence, or in layman terms, a gate, to close the 10-foot wide gap for pedestrian walkways. But little did Joe Blow know that there are people with disabilities that need a pathable access, right, Mr. O'Farrell? Because people with visible disabilities and non-disabilities, like Mr. O'Farrell would know, that programmatic access should not be denied because we need a 10-foot wide gate. But what would you care, right? You're not disabled. You don't give a shit about the disabled population, right? Let's talk about the disabled. Let's talk about item 6, Joe Blow. Lincoln Avenue between Sunset Avenue, where I go to my doctor's appointments. Why would you want to block a pedestrian walkway? Think about it, PDQ. PDQ, give me an answer. Does anybody want to ask me why we have to block the access? What a freaking joke. And then I turn over to item number 5. Hey, where's Herman, or AKA Herb Weston Jr.? I like to talk to him about that loan. But that's on a different public comment card I submitted earlier during Mr. Weezar and Mr. Herb Wesson's this morning's assembly downstairs, or I should say across the hall. It had to do with Mr. PDQ himself, PDQ Price, relative to naming an intersection at Olympic Boulevard. Why not name it Royal Suck It Off Square, PDQ? We know about the business. Let's talk about business. Let's just name it Wayne Spindler Square. Or better, how about Advocate Armando Herman, for the record, Yang Square? Because I ain't no goddamn Yankee. I am no goddamn Yankee. Brandenburg versus Ohio, 1969. KKK, Mr. Clarence would say, irrelevant, nigger, irrelevant. No one cares about PDQ, but it is an issue of relevant conversation. And then when I go back now to my item of favorite regarding the Office of Community Beautification, I'd like to thank Paul Roch for all his dedication in public work presentations, because Paul Roch does a very excellent job for the city of Los Angeles dealing with eyesores. Eyesores in Long Beach, where Joe Buscaino Blow lives, and there in Mr. Curran Price's PDQ Watts area, or so-called slash LA. So keep up the good work, Paul Roch. You do an excellent job, and I'm glad I have the moment to thank you for all you've done in providing us access to materials that clean up the garbage in our neighborhoods.
Okay, thank you. I also have cards on all items from Mr. Spindler. Is he here? I don't see him. Okay, we'll also then look at the agenda. Colleagues, if we can take on consent 5, 6, 7, 8, unless you want to pull any of those items. I'm sorry? Okay. Well, there's a technical amendment on item 7. Thanks, John. So let's take on consent 5, 6, and 8 on consent. Any objection? Okay, here, no objection. We'll move those items on consent. Item number 3 is technical amendment as well. We'll take item number 3 right now, read that into the record.
Item 3, general exemption, city attorney report and ordinance relative to the condemnation and acquisition of property located at 12760 to 12776 Foothill Boulevard to be used for transit facilities by the Los Angeles Department of Transportation.
Thank you. On one of the recommendations, number 4, it needs to read as follows. Bus facility purchase program account number 94L446.
That was a mistake by me.
Okay, no problem. Is that that's what you're looking for on the on amending this item?
That is the only item, yes, that's the only thing.
Fantastic. Okay, so let's, colleagues, any questions, concerns on this item, number 3? Okay, hearing none, we will approve this item number 3 as amended. Let's hear now on item number 7 from, if you can read that into the record, we have a representative from Mr. Bonner's office.
Item 7, motion Bonin Buscaino directing the Bureau of Engineering to reduce the dedication at 11612 Culver Boulevard from 20 feet to 0 feet to allow a half right-of-way at 30 feet and to accept a 10-foot surface-to-air easement adjacent to Culver Boulevard to complete a 15-foot sidewalk and to allow for future street widening and to reduce the dedication of on Dawes Avenue between Culver Boulevard and the alley to the rear of the subject site from 5 feet to 0 feet to allow a half right-of-way at 25 feet to maintain the existing street and sidewalk dimensions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Committee Chair Ezra Gale, for Councilmember Mike Bonin. At the request of the Bureau of Engineering, we'd like to make a technical correction to the item to ensure that it references a Planning Commission case, and that I'm going to read that case number into the record. It is CPC 2015-4522 DB.
Very good. John, we got that? We good? Okay. Okay, colleagues, any questions on the item before us? This is item number 7. Request was made to amend this item per Mr. Bonin's office. So hearing none, we'll approve item number 7 as amended. Okay. Thank you for that. Okay, we have 3 discussion items moving forward, but let's take public comment now. We have 1 card on public comment. Mr. Herman, please come forward. 1 minute public comment, and we can close out public comment once he's done. General public comment.
Such compassion when it comes to your constituents. Such compassion when it comes to the population of homelessness. Just like I said in Van Nuys, vote no on H, vote no on 1, vote no on 2, vote no on 3, and for the 4th fucking time, just vote no. They're taking advantage of you, the taxpayers, the ratepayers. They made up all these lies. They're all nothing but lies, like Hugo Rossiter and Eric Rede. Don't you fucking get it? stop being bamboozled by embezzlement, lies, fraud, waste, and specifically the corruption here by the goddamn landlords, tenants who continue to take our homes away from us. I got something to say about that for general public comment. Fuck you.
For those of joining us here in committee for the first time, this is your First Amendment right that you're experiencing right before your eyes. So apologize for those who've been offended by Mr. Herman's comments. We'll now close general public comment. We will now look forward to hearing item number 1, please.
Item 1, the Office of Community Beautification, Board of Public Works, to present verbal report relative to ongoing programs and services.
Very good. We do have Mr. Roch. Thank you so much for your presentation, colleagues. The Office of Community Beautification is a tremendous asset for the City of Los Angeles. As you know, they are tasked with working with our local nonprofits as it relates to addressing issues relating to graffiti abatement, removal of litter on city streets and sidewalks. It's a presentation before us here on this item. Thanks, Paul, for your presence, and give us a brief overview of the Office of Community Beautification and what programs and services they offer. And I do know last year the board and council approved an amendment to the existing graffiti abatement contracts to include litter pickup and weed abatement on public streets and sidewalks. I just want to get an update on how that's been coming along. Absolutely. And this also gives us an opportunity, colleagues, to, I know we just started our new fiscal year, but as we prepare for fiscal year 17-18 to advocate for more dollars, I feel this is also an amazing job program as well. We are putting to work our residents, whether it's through GAP or the Conservation Corps or those involved in reentry programs, to put them to work and at the same time improve the quality of life in our city. So thank you so much for your presence, and looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Paul Roch, Director of the Office of Community Beautification, which is a part of the Board of Public Works. We are dedicated to helping keep Los Angeles beautiful through collaborations with community volunteers and nonprofit community-based organizations, which I'm sure you guys are all very familiar with, those in your districts. We do this in several different ways, primarily through coordinating the resources we have available through the Department of Public Works. We have a warehouse that is full of trash bags and brooms and shovels and rakes, and they don't do the city any good if they're sitting in the warehouse, so our job is to get those out to those community volunteers that are doing something to improve the cleanliness of their neighborhoods. And we do have events going on almost every weekend, numerous events throughout the city of Los Angeles, a number of which I know are sponsored by the various council districts, and we've worked with each of your offices on a number of locations throughout the past year. I'm going to just provide some of the quick highlights about the Office of Community Beautification and our 3 major programs that we operate. The first one being the Graffiti Removal Program. OCB contracts with 12 nonprofit community-based organizations and 1 privately owned specialty graffiti abatement contractor. Last year, these contractors responded to 133,000 community requests for graffiti abatement service. This accounted for about 25% of the overall graffiti abatement work. The other 75% that they do is just proactively driving the major corridors of the city, knowing where the hot spots are in their district, and hopefully getting that removed before people maybe even realize that that particular wall had gotten tagged. In total, OCB contractors last year removed 27.4 million square feet of graffiti from approximately 490,000 surfaces or locations citywide. Over the past year, the cost of graffiti removal has worked out to approximately 26 cents per square foot, utilizing these nonprofit agencies. The industry standard is closer to $1 a square foot, so we're actually getting good bang for our buck using the nonprofit sector to provide these services. As was mentioned, starting this past January, OCB contractors are now also providing public right-of-way cleanup services as part of the Clean Streets LA program. OCB contractors are providing litter cleanup, weed abatement, some bulky item pickup, and supplementing the work being performed by the Bureau of Sanitation. So over the 6-month period from January through the end of June, OCB contractors provided service at 1,014 locations. They filled and collected 48,000 bags, trash bags of weeds, litter, and debris from along the public right-of-way, collected 996 bulky items, and picked up a total of 490,000 pounds of trash, litter, and weeds and debris and removed it from along the public right-of-way. Utilizing these nonprofit community-based organizations and community service workers, court-referred workers, has proven to be a cost-effective method of addressing the issues of urban blight. And then lastly, OCB also works with volunteers who come out pretty much every weekend to get involved in neighborhood beautification and cleanup projects. This past year, OCB coordinated and supported over 300 volunteer cleanup events, which involved over 25,000 volunteers who provided over 100,000 volunteer hours painting, cleaning, planting, and beautifying the various neighborhoods of the city of LA. Based upon the value of volunteer time, this equates to almost $3 million in service provided by community volunteers to improving the city of Los Angeles. According to research by Keep America Beautiful, a nationwide anti-litter organization, for every $1 invested in cleaning and beautifying a community, $27 is returned in community benefits, including increased property values, public safety, economic development, etc. A major aspect of the OCB programs, in addition to providing these valuable services, is also to provide jobs to at-risk youth and young adults and low-income members of the City of Los Angeles. Through the Graffiti Abatement and the Clean Streets LA program, over 125 permanent positions are employed through OCB contractors. Over 95% of the persons employed via these OCB programs are actual residents of the City of Los Angeles. In addition, this summer, over 150 Los Angeles youth were employed through OCB contractors as part of the Summer Youth Employment Program, and they assist with the graffiti removal and weed abatement programs throughout the City of Los Angeles. The fiscal year that just began July 1st, an additional $750,000 was provided to the OCB budget, and this will provide for an additional 10 graffiti abatement crews this coming year. So we are looking to increase the amount of graffiti removed and also decrease the time it gets out to address a particular request. Our goal is to get to as many requests as possible within 24 to 48 hours, and those 10 additional crews will be primarily directed to responding specifically to requests for service so that we are able to bring those numbers down. This concludes a brief update on the activities of the Office of Community Beautification and the value of investing in beautification in the City of Los Angeles. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. A number of our council districts have partnered with our OCB contractors. Can you give us a couple examples of some of those partnerships and some success stories within our respective council districts?
Yes, absolutely. I would say about half the council offices provide supplemental funding to the various contractors that work in their district. I guess I'll start in CD15. And you guys have provided funding for GAP to provide a number of different, not only to supplement the regular weed abatement and cleanup services, but you also did a beautification sort of decorative street lighting project in some of the different business improvement districts down there. They also received funding to provide cleanup and ongoing maintenance services of the Harbor City Greenway, I believe it is, through Bureau of Sanitation. Council District 9 has provided funding for Coalition for Responsible Community Development to provide a number of services in their area. And the list goes on, whether it's weed abatement, CD13, CD6 have also provided supplemental funding as well. So the contractors, are very capable of providing all sorts of different things, whether it's building community gardens. In some cases, they've installed pedestrian furniture, bicycle racks, all sorts of things like that. So they're definitely good at working the areas that they work in. And in addition, a number of council districts have provided funding through our office to the LA Conservation Corps, which does work on a citywide basis, and whether it's tree planting, tree watering, all those sorts of things as well. A couple of our contractors are now receiving funding through the Sidewalk Repair program and are doing Sidewalk Repair, which is supplementing the work being coordinated by Bureau of Engineering. And as a result of that, the Sidewalk Repair, there's a number of new trees that are being planted, and several of our contractors are being contracted to provide the ongoing maintenance and tree watering of the new trees for a 3-year period.
Yep.
So.
Thank you. Colleagues, questions? Ms. Martinez?
Does the department react more is it more reactive to requests from communities to come in and do a cleanup, or do you see yourself more as a proactive department? The reason I ask is, are we actually just clean after people, or are we instilling in people or in communities how to clean up after themselves? Are we changing human behavior by being out there? How do you perceive your department to be?
So I think it's a combination of both. I mean, certainly a large portion of what we do is just sort of reactive and going out and whether it's, chopping down weeds or sweeping up trash, something like that. That is a big portion of what we do. But we do have coordinators that are assigned to different council districts, and they do go out to a lot of community meetings, neighborhood council groups, talk to residents about getting involved in the cleanliness of their neighborhoods, the appropriate ways to, dispose of, trash or bulky items or things like that. So we try to do it both ways. We attend over 500 community meetings every year just to talk to the groups about how they can get involved, the resources we have available. We work with all the different council offices, homeowners organizations, schools. We've worked with a huge number of schools and trying to instill that message in the youth while they're still young enough to kind of pick up that positive message as well.
I would love to sit down with a coordinator who is assigned to my district, particularly around schools, and how to teach people how to change behavior in terms of cleanliness. I think that's important.
Right.
It's important work that I do in my office. It's just not about going out and constantly clean after people, but teaching people the pride in their community and teaching how to not litter and report some of these bulky item pickups and that kind of stuff.
Right.
So I'm really big on trying to change human behavior as opposed to constantly clean up after people. I think we need to change a little
Absolutely.
bit. I think we need to change our approach. The other thing I wanted to ask, how is the department logging a weed abatement now that we have clean stat?
How are we
logging your
so
weed abatement?
We are in the process right now of working with ITA and the Bureau of Sanitation to get that information into the city's MyLA 311 system, which is the same system where all of our graffiti abatement stats are logged into at this time. Right now, it's not set up for the weed abatement litter cleanup portion. My understanding is we're probably looking at about a October, November timeframe to have it set up in there. So right now our contractors are providing us that information basically on Excel spreadsheets that are then emailed into our office, and we are consolidating all of the information in our office.
And moving forward, is that how you're going to coordinate with CleanStat, just to make sure that we're hitting up all the right areas and that we have current statistics as to what you're doing and what kind of work you're doing?
Yes, and we work closely with the Bureau of Sanitation, and when they go out and they monitor the different zones, and when they notice that there are areas in need, then we deploy our crews to go out there. We also work closely with the various council offices. So if you guys have any particular areas in need that you're aware of that you'd like us to have the contractors go in and work, we have that capability also.
And how many square feet of graffiti removal do you say you clean up a year?
This past year, we did about 27.5 million square feet. The year before, it was around 30 million square feet. So it tends to fluctuate a little bit. Sometimes we're finding that as we receive more and more requests for service, it actually affects our ability to go out and proactively, we don't want our contractors driving by, 10 tags that they might see just because the one at the end of the street was actually reported for abatement. But on the other hand, they know that, they're kind of held to certain standards as to the time that it takes to get out there and get to a request.
And how much does $1 million get us in graffiti removal? How many square feet do you think?
Well, so on average, a crew costs about $75,000 to $85,000 for a year's worth of service. That's the supplies, the salaries, the insurance, everything that goes along with that. Now, square footage wise, I would, it's somewhat difficult because sometimes, if you're in an area that has big walls, you might get 300 or 400 square feet in 5 minutes. Whereas if you're working on things like light poles or traffic control boxes that you have to maybe, rather than just painting over, you're scrubbing them off with a chemical, you might get, 100 square feet, but it took you 3 hours to get that or something like that.
And the reason I asked, Mr. Chair, is because I currently work with 2 other nonprofits in my district that provide this service to the community. So I'm trying to figure out what gets me more bang for my dollar. That's the reason I was asking about this, the square footage of how much we can actually remove. How many people are on your crew?
So a crew is either a 1-person or a 2-person crew. There are certain parts of the city where we need, now that's the actual employees. Now they also take out, maybe 2 or 3 community service workers, people that are working off community service hours as well. But in certain parts of the city, it's one guy in a truck, with a water blaster, that he's trailing around and cleaning off sidewalks. Somewhere else it might be 2 guys where, you're doing more paint out and stuff like that, but you got to have the extra eyes just looking around to make sure that everything's safe for them to get out and do graffiti abatement.
And my last question, Mr. Chair, what's your success, what do you think the success has been in using the anti-graffiti paint? Has that been successful?
So the problem with the anti-graffiti coatings or paints is you still have to go out and do some work to do abatement on them, and they tend to be very expensive. So we only really use those like to protect murals that we don't want to just paint over, or in some cases there might be a brick wall or something like that you don't want to keep sandblasting because it'll eventually eat into the brick. So those are effective, but they're a lot more expensive. And sometimes, where a wall might have a coating, you have to come out and maybe spend 20 minutes, kind of washing it down with the solvent to get rid of it, whereas you could spend 5 minutes just painting over it again and matching the color of paint. So.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. O'Farrell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hello, Paul, and thanks for your presentation. I know in the 13th District, we have 2 really great contractors that paint out graffiti, Central City Action Committee and Los Angeles Beautification Team.
Right.
And in my experience in my district, a little over 3 years now, actually being the council member in it, I think we are ahead of the taggers at this point. And I think that in the 13th, the graffiti gets removed very expeditiously, especially compared to just a few years ago and then way back in the day for sure. I think where we struggle is loose trash. And as you know, I contract out with a few agencies as well and work very closely with your office. And I have my clean team, and we have youth from Conservation Corps that we pay out of office holder funds or discretionary funds. And that's one, really great unit that makes a difference. My question, and I think it might be something for you to look into, is loose trash tends to proliferate in specific areas. And as far as outreach and communication and education, why not identify the loose trash hotspots and then do a robust outreach in that particular area, whether it's a school or an apartment block or a business area. Maybe that would be, I think, a good constructive approach to saying, to reaching out to those affected by it who see it every day, who walk through it every day. I mean, I get requests all the time just on Twitter and personal messages about areas that my office has just cleaned up a few days before, for example. So I know the hot spots are out there. And then with that, also, be prepared to post no dumping signs with a fine amount. The fine that if you're caught, to really focus on those hot spots to bring lasting change in those areas. Do you all do something like that, or is there something that my office could help you with?
We again, would certainly be happy to partner with your office, and whether it's, outreaching to certain, different businesses. Obviously, the fast food industry, around, various those types of restaurants creates a lot of paper trash and stuff like that. I know that the Clean Streets LA program is going to be focusing on a lot of that community outreach, working with the different neighborhood councils, putting in a lot more trash receptacles on a citywide basis and stuff like that, specifically to try to deal with those types of issues, just the loose paper and trash and debris that you're right, is just all over the place. And it's kind of like graffiti. I mean, you can come and you can clean something up, and then you're back there 2 days, and it's like you were never there.
And sometimes it's the same people doing the leaving their trash and dumping, right, illegal dumping, etc. I'm also a big believer in the carrot and the stick. I would love to bust more of these individuals, because it's a crime and it really brings down our neighborhoods. Do you all work with street use inspectors at all to help set up stings in these? Where I'm going is, if we identify these hotspot areas and then you focus on the area, then you can bring in other resources and maybe actually catch someone, dumping a truckload of tires or whatever and putting them in jail where they belong. We really need to, like Ms. Martinez is alluding to, I think we need to work on changing the culture in LA where it's just okay to dump anything anywhere. And that whatever we can do to help change the culture, I think is what I'm very interested in as well.
Right. And again, I know that the part of the Clean Streets LA program is exactly that, working with city attorney's office and stuff to set up some sting operations and stuff like that, and catch some of this illegal dumping where they just bring in huge amounts of, usually construction debris or things like that, and just totally, dump it in an alley and block off the use of the alley and things like that. So you're right, the big stick needs to be used sometimes. We've worked a lot with LAPD and stuff on graffiti stings, and in a lot of cases they like us to, paint out specific walls where we know that they're going to be a magnet for graffiti taggers and stuff back. But certainly I think part of Clean Streets is going to be gearing that up towards litter and dumping as well.
Last question, just with Prop 47, is it harder to charge a tagger with a felony than it used to be?
Yes.
Figured as much. Right, because it has to be $950 of damage or destruction.
Right. It is, and we're also finding that the court systems now are more inclined to want to collect the money from the people as opposed to giving them community service hours. So it's getting harder to get the community service workers for all of our contractors as well. People aren't getting as many hours and are having to pay heftier fines instead.
Yeah. One more downside to Prop 47. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Price.
Thank you. Thank you for the report and for your efforts. We work quite closely with CRCD.
Yep.
and I know they're one of the community organizations that you have supported in a number of ways. I agree with my colleagues. You know, we got to educate. You know, we've been working hard to pick up trash and debris this last 3 years. We estimate we picked up about 6 million tons trash, debris, bulky items from the alleys and the parkways. A lot of help from your agency. But what can we do to try to, you know, change the mindset? Do you have any programs, for example, where you go into the schools now, the elementary schools or junior high schools, you know, coloring books or speaking programs? Are you guys making any progress in that way that the council officers can piggyback on and work with you on?
We previously had a program that went into elementary schools, the Educational Outreach Program. That was defunded, I would say, about 4 or 5 years ago. But we were able to go in and give a anti-graffiti, anti-litter presentation to students throughout LAUSD. And we did it to the point where we knew we would hit every student at least once in their 4th, 5th, and 6th grade years to give them that message about not throwing trash on the streets, not, you know, writing on the walls and things like that, and to pick up a broom or a paint roller rather than a spray paint can. Unfortunately, that project was defunded about 4 or 5 years ago. It was a great program. We ran it through one of our nonprofit agencies, GAP, and they did a really good job. We'd certainly be inclined to get a program like that up and running again.
I think it's imperative. I think we got to try to figure out how we can help educate folks, and the schools. You know, the elementary school is a great opportunity, I think. So I would encourage you to try to identify some more funding for that. Did I also hear you say now there's a weed abatement sort of component on our graffiti removal, or has that always been a part of?
Well, we had funding for weed abatement and litter cleanup up until about 2010, 2011. For about the past 5 years, it was defunded, but now starting just this past January, as part of the Clean Streets LA program, our contractors are funded for weed abatement, for bulky item pickup and stuff. So CRCD should be providing some of those services in Council District 9. And if you guys have any specific locations and stuff, we'd be happy to work with you to get those on the schedule for abatement.
Okay, good. And then finally, dumping. Obviously, the dumping is a big issue, especially in District 9. The alleys I referenced, we've working hard to clean them up and monitor those. But the freeway dumpings are still continue to be a problem, and signage, you know, sometimes helps. Cameras help. I think we got to do all three. How do you see your department sort of working specifically with some of these problem chronic dumping areas by the 110 freeway, by the 10 freeway?
Yeah, that is a little bit out of our bailiwick. The big construction dumping and stuff like that tends to be addressed more by Bureau of Sanitation, Bureau of Street Services. But again, I know that part of the Clean Streets LA program is looking at putting up some of the no dumping signs, setting up some sting operations in some of those alleys where they know once they get cleaned up, they're going to get, you know, dumped in again within a matter of, you know, hours, if not days or something like that. So if it hasn't happened already, I believe some of those stings operations are coming soon.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Rue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a great update. And so you guys pretty much do everything whenever we call 311 or use the 311 app, whether it's graffiti abatement or trash pickup, and bulky item pickup.
Well, no, a bulky item pickup, if it gets submitted through the 311, will generally go to Bureau of Sanitation. Our contractors, as far as bulky item, tend to do more, you know, if they're driving down the street and they're doing a weed cleanup and they see, you know, an old toilet just sitting here in the middle of the street or a couch or something like that, our idea is, hey, let's get it off as quick as we can. So they'll pick it up and throw it in the back of their pickup truck. But if a specific request come in, that will go to the Bureau of Sanitation. As far as graffiti abatement, yes, any graffiti abatement requests through the mobile app or you call 311 come to our office, and we will either do it or refer it to whoever the right agency is. A lot of people report graffiti on the freeways to us. Well,
Right.
that ends up going to Caltrans. Stuff on the schools goes to the school district. But we'll either do it ourselves or get it out to the correct agency.
Well, it's great to hear that whether it's graffiti abatement or bulky items, if you see it, that you guys pick it up. Because, yeah, sometimes it's there's several items in 2-block radius, and I always wondered if you don't come and pick up just what's reported, but you pick up everything that's around it. So that's great. But based on what Councilwoman Martinez and actually Councilmember Price also touched on, the educational campaign. Most recently I've had lots of constituents in my district asking if we do have a formal educational campaign, and I'm glad to hear that we have you have a lot of outreach meetings, but I wanted to ask, and we wanted to think it through in our office before we reached out to you, but what you thought about having a more robust an actual campaign on littering and all these other things, whether it's through social media or commercials or having some sort of slogan or some mascot, and if you guys are thinking of something like that, and also if you have the budget for it, because I know that's a huge impediment. I mean, we could ask you to do a lot of things, but if you don't have the budget or the resources for it, and if you don't have it, how much would it take? And lastly, would something like that even be effective? I don't know if you had previous educational campaigns, not just the ones you have now, but a robust with like a whole rollout. Is that how effective is it?
Yeah, so throughout the years, there have been a number of different sort of educational campaigns. When we first started, they rolled out, they called it LA Sparkle and Make LA Sparkle. We've had the Keep Los Angeles Beautiful campaign, which is through our affiliate, which is a part of Keep America Beautiful. Right now, the latest one, again, is through the Clean Streets LA program. And they are looking at some reprogrammed dollars to do specifically that, to kind of create an outreach campaign. There have been various mascots kind of used throughout the years for city kind of educational purposes and things like that. There's used to be an octopus that was used, and you have a broom in one arm and a paint roller in one arm and a trash bag in one arm or something like that. Things have all been used, and I think ultimately it's somewhat hard to measure the effectiveness, but my sense is that, if you're out there, and especially with the youth, and really getting them involved in cleaning up and giving that positive message, that you are making an impact.
So you said currently it's Make LA, what's the current
program? Right now, I think we have an ongoing Keep Los Angeles Beautiful program, which is involved in, all sorts of various types of beautification. We're part of Keep America Beautiful. But the latest one is, I think, through the Keep Clean Streets LA program. And really, so far the focus has really been on the cleanup and stuff like that, but there is a lot of behind-the-scenes work going on towards gearing up a social outreach campaign, and really trying to instill that mindset into the residents of the city about proper ways just to get rid of your trash.
Okay. Well, we'll follow up with you. I think my office, as well as all of my colleagues who've expressed it even before me, I think we will be very interested in some sort of how we could partner with you on that.
Great.
Because I think it's been asked for, and I think a lot of folks are asking for it. So
yep,
we'll follow up with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Any other questions, colleagues? Okay, no action on this item. Thanks for the presentation. Looking forward to working with you and your team. Okay, let's take item number 2 now.
Item 2, mitigated negative declaration and Board of Public Works report relative to the Channel 35 studio relocation project at the Merced Theater and Masonic Hall buildings located in the El Pueblo de Los Angeles Historic Park.
Mr. Abdallah, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. Good afternoon.
A lot of progress being made here. We're all very excited about moving forward on this. I know it's project before us has been in the works for many, many years, or at least the last several years, 3 or 4 years. Thomas Jefferson often spoke of the need for an educated, informed electorate for our democracy to function, and Channel 35 helps us accomplish that. Channel 35 colleagues have done an amazing job in producing local programming, winning numerous Emmys despite their cramped, out-of-date facilities in Little Tokyo. My only concern that I had moving forward is a lot more people are steering away from cable and are cutting the cord, as they say, and don't have access to Channel 35, while more and more are streaming video through the internet and are using social media. So I want to be sure that this investment will serve the city well into the future and not solely relying on an outdated model of producing TV shows in a studio and broadcasting them solely on cable TV. Can you provide us with a detailed description of the scope and timeline of the project before us? Absolutely. Then I have a couple questions for ITA. I do want to mention and recognize Chris Espinoza, General Manager of Pueblo, who's here in the audience. Thank you, Mr. Espinoza, for being here. So, go ahead. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Ohaji Abdullah, the Bureau of Engineering Architectural Division. The project before you entails the relocation of Channel 35 into 18,000 square feet of historic structures over in the El Pueblo Historic Park. The two structures, the Masonic Hall and the Merced Theater, are being rehabilitated holistically to meet the Secretary of Interior's historic preservation standards, while adding in components that meet the functions for the two studios, for the Channel 35 studios. To simply answer your question, yes, we are going from an analog studio to a complete digital studio that will indeed accept and encourage the new workflow that comes from cutting the cord. The project is roughly about $23 million, about $15 million of construction, about $9 to $10 million $7 to $9 million of actual equipment costs. The project is slated to go out to bid and award before June of next year. The construction, as you can imagine, is going to be very difficult, as we are working with, once again, 18,000 square feet, 3-story structure plus the basement of historic fabric. So the construction will be long, drawn out, unfortunately, and we are setting a robust schedule of about 2 years, which also includes the installation and commissioning of the equipment. And we believe we can make that timeline as long as we don't run into any bones in the parking lot, essentially.
Thank you. I do want to bring up ITA. Any questions for Bureau of Engineering colleagues? For Mr. Abdullah? If ITA can come forward. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
As the project moves forward, how will this new studio use new technology to better inform the public?
So Jean Holm, Assistant General Manager at ITA. So we've actually already started that process because, as you can imagine, retraining our workforce and making sure that we build up an audience for online media is slightly different than what we've been doing for broadcast. So we are changing over some of our programming, a lot more original content you'll be seeing from Channel 35 this year. That's, in fact, I think the first new program. It involves the City Council. We'll also be increasing the perspective that we have for our YouTube channel. So we currently have a YouTube channel where we take the kinds of materials that we create, we cut those down to sort of 1 to 3 minute videos, the kind of thing that's really digestible, and we put that up on YouTube as well as other online media. We do a lot of promotion of that over different kinds of social media, Instagram, Twitter, and other kinds of things. The new studio layout is actually kind of completely re-engineered, so a lot of the budget that we've allocated and that we already have reserved from previous fiscal years that we've been sort of putting into holding, is to re-digitize all of Channel 35. So if you go to Channel 35 today, you see tapes and you see archives and you see traditional studios with a footprint of the future of the social media and YouTube. But what you're going to see in the new studio is a complete re-engineering of both the equipment as well as the workforce. So we are building community coalitions. We're doing work right now. We're in conversation with the Valley Performing Arts Center to be able to gather some of that community-generated content and be able to repurpose it and bring it out to all Angelinos.
I see, thank you. The project has a $22 million budget. Can you explain the source of funds for this project?
Sure. So the City of Los Angeles franchises with a variety of cable providers, Time Warner, Charter, now Spectrum, and others. And so we get a portion of that franchise fee. A portion of it goes into the general fund, but a portion is reserved by ITA. We have been sort of holding some of that into an account, as well as a component that came from a lawsuit with Time Warner. And have held that. It's specifically, the portion we have is specifically allocated for operations and equipment infrastructure. And so we chose to look at taking that money and being able to invest it not only in our digitization and new equipment, but the whole convening of space. So the new studio allows us to bring the community into the studio. Right now, if you've ever been there, it's...
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So it's an older facility in Little Tokyo. So this gives us a chance to actually bring people into a live meeting space, to be able to hold community-based activities as that might seem appropriate, and to be really able to let people connect, not only to the content, but the content providers, and to tell their stories too. So we've really looked at taking that money as
Similar to the YouTube model that you see, folks can come in and produce their own shows.
So there's a component of that. We actually have a piece in a future budget allocated for giving student training, so that we can actually help train that next generation. And we have partnerships with Cal State LA and some of the other universities that bring in some of that content. We're doing evaluations with content coming from UCLA and USC right now.
Fantastic. That's good. Mr. Rue?
So the majority of all the 22 million is from outside city sources?
Yeah, so it doesn't come from any taxpayer money. It comes from the franchise fees and from the other Time Warner money.
That's great. This might be an engineering question, or it might be your question. Anyone could answer this. The project cost is 22 million. So is it predominantly, I guess 3.1 of it is building retrofitting, but everything else is, I guess, to build the studio out? Or?
Yeah, so it's a split. So there's a component there for the equipment. As you can imagine, this kind of both broadcasting and generation, sort of with a new version of the future, is a bit costly in equipment. So there's about 14 million or so, I have to double check my numbers, that is equipment costs.
Wow.
I know. I know. And then we have, we're moving to high definition. So you might have seen in city council chambers and some of the commission rooms, we're re-outfitting all of that into high definition, which serves us both on the social media and YouTube platforms to have a more professional look, as well as the broadcast. And the rest of the money is actually for Public Works, to be able to, and Ohaji's great team, to be able to retrofit the buildings, to be able to build those out, to do some work that's needed to kind of ensure the capabilities that we're talking about with public access to some areas, but still being able to secure some of our equipment, upgrade some of the areas. So the city has a great opportunity here to actually sort of repurpose those buildings, which are a little bit dilapidated right now, and open them up for a lot of great civic use.
So 14 million for equipment, 8 million for I guess, build out.
So our last report to the Municipal Facilities Committee reported a cost of $22 million, as you see. That cost included about $14 million for construction, and then roughly $9 to $10 million for the equipment costs. Since then, we've had several other requirements for the equipment that have increased our total project budget cost. We prepared a report to go back to the MFC. They continued it from last month to this month. So this month from the MFC, we will have a new approved budget that covers all of our equipment costs, upgrades as needed, as well as any construction cost increases, as we are now nearing the 90% completion of design.
Okay, so the price tag is gonna go up then?
It's gonna go up, but not dramatically.
But are we funded for it?
Yes.
Yes, we are.
From outside? So what's our total funding for it? I mean, your budget, your pool from Time Warner and all these other sources.
So we have to project out our fees each year for what we expect to come in with franchise. At this point, I think we're the last budget I saw was 22 million for the?
Yes.
22 million for the building, and then an additional 14 for the equipment. And we do have all of that set aside.
Okay. And where are you currently located now? I've never been to your...
So Channel 35 is in Little Tokyo in the Union Bank building and the building right adjacent to it.
Okay.
So we've been at least there for
So,
19 years.
wow, okay. Last question, why El Pueblo? Is there a certain...
Well, one, we were looking to leverage existing city-owned property. These two buildings have been sitting vacant since 2000, where they received structural upgrades, but they're completely air-conditioned to protect our historic fabric, but are sitting vacant and unusable at this point, as no other private entity is willing to come in and make the investment. From the Municipal Facilities Committee standpoint, it made more sense to place that money into a city-owned facility and bring that entity back to fruition and bring that activity back to the park versus purchasing another plot of land and building a new facility.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Any question? Mr. Price.
Just one quick one. Thanks for the report. So is this new facility going to include more community, public access studios or any community access studios or...
Yeah, so the
what's the purpose? What's the benefit?
The benefit to the immediate community? There's a couple. So one is that there's a space that's a live action area. So it's one where we can use as a large studio, but other groups can come in and also use that either for meeting space or for creating their own broadcast as appropriate. We have to really look through the policies that the city council might want to have around the use of that space. But that would be an open space, and we're expecting that would have a civic use and a community use. In addition, we are looking at the possibility of creating an internet cafe there that would be available for our homeless population and other people who are across our digital divide, so that we can have more inclusiveness for city services. And that could range from somebody who's homeless to somebody who's a visitor to the city and doesn't have other access. But that would give us an opportunity to be able to showcase city services, also see different kinds of broadcast information, be able to give people access to streaming services that they may not have otherwise.
Thank you. Any others? Okay. Thank you so much for the report. If I don't hear any objections, we'll approve item 2 and send that to council without objection. Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, our final item number 4. Oh, I'm sorry, hold on. My deepest apologies to our general manager, Mr. Espinosa. I'm going to give you an opportunity to speak on the item that we just approved.
Well, Chris Espinosa, General Manager of El Pueblo Historical Monument. We're really excited about the project because these are general fund liabilities, these 2 buildings, and with special funds, we're going to raise them to a Class A level, 1850s, 1870s buildings. This week on Thursday, we also have the Italian-American Museum of Los Angeles opening at the Italian Hall from 1908, another great investment by the city of Los Angeles. And so we wanted to invite you all out to come and enjoy this gorgeous new museum that is going to be free to the public and another great asset for our city's birthplace. So thank you.
I was hoping not to hear an objection from you, but thanks for your leadership and managing our beloved El Pueblo, an amazing historical resource to the city of Los Angeles.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, now our final item number 4.
Item 4, Board of Public Works report relative to a grant award in the amount of $500,000 from the State of California Natural Resources Agency for use by the Bureau of Sanitation for the Trees for South LA, mitigating the effects of the 110 freeway project and related actions.
Thank you. Colleagues, this item has significant impact since CDs 8, 9, and 15, and just wanted to ensure that there's communication coordination that takes place between the sanitation, OCB, BOE, and BSS. I want to make sure that we're not constructing new tree wells in locations where sidewalks will be replaced. Can you present to us, want to know, has sanitation identified the specific locations where trees will be planted and what species of trees will be planted and why only 2 years of watering that would be provided instead of 3 years?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, council members, everyone present. My name is Arnel Aguilar with LA Sanitation. I'm here representing the grant portion. As far as the project, I'm also here with Amy Schulenberg, who's the project manager. The item before you is LA Sanitation's report requesting authority to apply for and receive a grant application from the state of California's Natural Resources Agency in the amount of $500,000 for a tree planting project called Trees for South LA, mitigating the effects of the 110 freeway. As part of the state's application process, a resolution is required. The project will plant 1,200 trees in South LA into Wilmington with 100 sidewalk cuts and 150 trees watered by the nonprofit groups. The Natural Resources Agency is offering funding for tree planting projects that contributes towards mitigating environmental effects of transportation facilities. The boundaries of this project are 3 miles circling the 110 freeway, reaching San Pedro and stretching towards the 10 freeway. As far as your question, Mr. Chair. Oh, sure.
The area.
The boundaries of this project are 3 miles circling the 110 freeway, reaching San Pedro and stretching towards the 10 freeway. The intent is to look for stretches of barren sidewalks east of the 110 freeway, primarily along streets with schools, businesses, or industrial parks with high foot traffic that could handle 30 to 50 or more new tree wells over a couple of blocks. So, if I may, I'd like to call on Amy Schulenberg.
Sure. Welcome. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. This is Amy Schulenberg with LA Sanitation. I'm the project manager on the grant. In response to your question about coordination with other city services, we do always permit all of our projects through street services with urban forestry. We will also be working with all the council offices to look at locations that they would like to have the first attention directed towards. And then also we do outreach to communities through neighborhood councils, block groups, that sort of stuff. So in terms of locations, yes, we'll coordinate as well as we can in terms of the way the projects roll out, that we're not undoing anything that was just done or have our projects taken out by another project. The choices of trees and location, we do coordinate that through our office. The grant had a specific tree palette that was looking at drought tolerant and site appropriate species. We do work again with Urban Forestry Division to approve every tree plant.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And Mr. Price.
Question. So the trees are going to be planted right adjacent, for example, to the freeway, or a block over, or what's the actual?
The grant has enough leeway that we can work within 3 miles of the 110. So what we're really hoping to do is work within the highway adjacent communities that have had historic impacts from the highway.
Okay. And do we have a planning committee that the council office can sit in on as we decide where and what?
You know, we are still have submitted the grant. We have not accepted. We have not been approved for the grant yet. We haven't been awarded.
Okay.
Once we do, we would certainly do outreach with your office.
Thank you so much. Thanks for your work and presentation. Looking forward to moving on this project impact.
Thank you very much.
And greening our major corridors along South Los Angeles. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, colleagues? Okay, so we'll approve item 4 without objection. Send that through. I believe that was our final item. We've satisfied general public comment. So with that, we are now adjourned. Thank you so much.